Call Clear Choice today.
Well, breaking news on the fallout over President Trump's latest remarks on Charlottesville. The president firing back at Lindsey Graham on Twitter after the South Carolina senator accused the president of equating white supremacists with those who were in Charlottesville to protest them. The president responding today, quote, publicity-seeking Lindsey Graham falsely stated that I said there is moral equivalency between the KKK, neo-Nazis, and white supremacists, and people like Ms. Heyer. Such a disgusting lie. He just can't forget his election trouncing. The people of South Carolina will remember. And then the president tweeting this after Graham issued this statement. This is Graham's statement yesterday saying, quote, President Trump took a step backward by again suggesting there is moral equivalency between the white supremacist neo-Nazis and KKK members who attended the Charlottesville rally and people like Ms. Heyer. I, along with many others, do not endorse this moral equivalency. So let's bring in our political panel. Kristen Soltis Anderson. She is a columnist at the Washington Examiner and a Republican pollster. And Isaac Wright. He is a former executive director for the pro-Clinton super PAC, Correct the Record. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kristen, I'll start with you. Is that a fair assessment from Lindsey Graham?
I think Lindsey Graham is not wrong for thinking that Donald Trump's statements on Tuesday really set us backwards. That the statement that he made on Monday, it came a little too late, but he should have just left it there. And instead, on Tuesday, by saying there were some very fine people that were at this rally, when there are folks that are showing up and they've got Nazi flags and they're demanding that Jews be cast out of society, you don't go looking for the nice people, the very fine people in that group, and you don't suggest that the folks on the other side were also to blame. Heather Heyer is not to blame for the violence that occurred, and so I think Lindsey Graham is in the right for criticizing President Trump.
But do you think that he was blaming the victim in this? I mean, I know everybody's been talking about this, but honestly,
imprecise, and that's why he shouldn't just shoot from the hip and go down to press conferences and say these things that even if he didn't mean it, and at this point, I'm not inclined to give President Trump the benefit of the doubt, but even if he didn't mean it. What he said was, well, there's blame on all sides, and he goes back to this all sides thing, this many sides thing. Look, there are folks on the far left that are violent, and the time to call them out is not the time when a white supremacist drove a car into a pack of mostly peaceful folks protesting racism.
Isaac, your take.
Our president failed the nation. Our country needs a moral compass of leadership, and we look to our president to help reflect that in our values, and our president failed us dramatically.
How did he fail us in this statement?
I read this multiple.
Okay, let me read the statement, though. Let me read his words, Isaac. I apologize for speaking over you. This is what the president said. I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists because they should be condemned totally. What's wrong with that?
It was the part that he went on to say where he talked about the many sides of the violence in Charlottesville, where he equated the people who stood up to Nazis. I have family members who fought for this country standing up to Nazis. There is no moral equivalency between Nazis killing Americans in streets of our country versus the people who are willing to stand up to Nazis. There is no moral equivalency there. And we deserve a leader and leadership in this country that recognize that. I praise Senator Graham. I praise his colleague, Senator Scott from South Carolina, who both stood up and remarked on and condemned the comments of the president that drew the suggestion of moral equivalency between those things.
Kristen, you get the last word on this.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that President Trump should be trying to achieve. That press conference on Tuesday was supposed to be about infrastructure. I wish that the president would focus on things like that. And I think by continuing...
and what might... Right. That's a good point. And what might help is if some other congressional leaders, Lindsey Graham being one of them, decided to move forward to the agenda as well.
I think that it's perfectly legitimate to call out the president when he says something as wrong as what he said on Tuesday.
Thank you both for joining us. Appreciate it. And we'll be right back.